What's up, guys? Welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched. Now, today we've got a little bit of a different feel. Today is going to be centered around managing your anxiety and managing mental health in some of the most unbelievable times I think anybody has ever experienced. During the coronavirus crisis, a lot of us are on lockdown. Some of us even are in self-isolation, and that includes me, as my wife is in that kind of vulnerable category. So we're kind of pretty much fully on lockdown. And it got me thinking a little bit about how GetPsyched might be able to bring some value to people. One of the things that I've recognized about what's going on here is at times you see the worst of humanity. Packing out shops, panic buying. And when I say the worst of humanity, what I mean is that, people can be very, very selfish. People can think only about themselves in situations like that. And I don't even necessarily blame those people as such. I think in many ways it's there's almost this virus of panic along with the virus of corona. So it's a kind of interesting dynamic. But we also see the best of humanity. We also see some amazing things happening. We see people helping those more vulnerable than themselves. We see people batch cooking food for NHS workers who are on the front line of this and who just have to deal with so much. It's just unreal. For the person who helps an elderly neighbour, or companies that are now creating ventilators or hand sanitizer even. So you really do see the best of humanity. And I thought, my skills are not so much in that area, but what I do have is maybe a bit of a platform on GetPsyched. I know enough about mental health. I know enough about anxiety and panic. And I thought, I have contacts as well. And one of the ways in which I thought I could use those contacts was to bring some value to the GetPsyched audience. So today is a very different feel. We're going to go through about 10 or 11 different psychologists, some of the most incredible psychologists, people that are very, very prominent in their field. We've got therapists, we have international speakers, best-selling authors who are going to give their top tips on how to manage anxiety and mental health, and manage your mental health during these really, really strange times. And I'm going to give you a couple of mine just off the bat, just initially, and then we're going to get into some of those individuals and they're going to give their top tips. The first thing for me is about building a routine. What I've noticed is that we're creatures of habit in many ways. And when those habits are enforcibly changed, or when there's something external that happens that causes those routines or those habits to change, then that can be really anxiety provoking. And so trying to establish new habits and new routines, I think, is really, really powerful and important. It's easy. And I'll be honest with you, this week, one of the things that I've not done well enough is establishing that routine. It's easy for me to wake up and put on a hoodie and joggies and just go about my day. But I think what I need to do more of is kind of getting up, getting dressed and ready like I would for a regular day and getting into my working day. Having set lunch breaks, having a time maybe even when I do a home gym workout, and I'll come to that in a second. Having a set time when I finish something I do in the evening. Creating a routine is going to be really, really important for people when they're self-isolating or social distancing. The other thing for me is thinking a little bit about some home workouts. And I think that's been really powerful for me. I go to the gym a lot, and my gym is a very social environment, and I can't go there right now. And so I need to change some of that, and I've been doing a lot of home workouts, and that's been really, really beneficial for me. I've invested a little bit of money in some resistance bands and things like that, and that's been really, really beneficial. The other thing that I think is important for us to do is to understand what we mean by anxiety and panic. And anxiety is all about the intolerance of uncertainty in many ways. And you think about this situation, it's incredibly uncertain. We don't really know what's going to happen. Every day seems different, and we're getting new information, and different statistics and details are given to us on a daily basis. And that can be anxiety provoking. Yes, the world is uncertain. Yes, this situation is uncertain. But our tolerance to it is going to determine how much of the anxiety we feel. And so we need to try and increase that tolerance. We need to be able to say, do you know what? These are uncertain times, but that's okay. And that's going to be subjective for every individual and how to manage that. I think we also need to understand a little bit about panic. And, we see that in society right now. We see people panicking, panic buying and stockpiling certain things that they don't really even need. I think one of the beneficial things that we can do there is understand that a little bit more. It makes me think a little bit about game theory, which says that, we understand certain rules of society, but as soon as someone breaks those rules, we automatically think we're at a disadvantage. And so therefore it's more justified that we break the rules also. And I think that is what we're seeing to some degree. Of course, it's more complex than that, but we're seeing that to some degree with panic buying. I think people understand the rules. I think people understand what's right and wrong when it comes to panic buying, but they see the person in the queue in front of them purchase 20 cans of tuna and they think, oh gosh, that's me at a disadvantage now I've got to do that in order to stay ahead of the game. And that's, I think, part of where we're at. So if we can understand that, we can break that cycle a little bit better and we can ease that anxiety. Anyway, guys, those are some of my top tips, some things to think about. Enough of me. Let's get into some of these incredible individuals who've got their top tips on managing anxiety and managing mental health in these really difficult times.
Go with the waves. Sometimes you're going to feel absolutely shit. Other times things are going to feel pretty much like they've always felt, and just accepting both feelings is really important, just to accept how things they are. And just remember that when you're feeling really shit, that the waves will take a break at some point and things will feel a bit better again, that you will probably go up and down like we're all doing. Stay connected to a sense of meaning. It's a chance to do things that feel meaningful for you. If you haven't read it already, have a look at Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Such a powerful book about what it means to have a sense of purpose and meaning in the things that we do, and how that can get us through some really rough times like Frankel in Auschwitz. So whether that's doing something creative, whether that's doing something that you've always wanted to do, whether that's contributing, and that's a big part of doing something meaningful, that can really help you get through and feel that there's something beyond where we're in at the moment. Stay connected to others, because having relationships with others is just so important for our mental health, and feeling that things are okay, not going into our own little rabbit holes and worries and anxieties, that having people to talk to, even if it's via Skype and phone, and there's lots of different ways we can connect with people now, and that can be really important in helping us all to stay safe. Take care.
So my top 3 tips for managing my own mental health during these uncertain and challenging times are as follows. 1, get off my phone. Switch it off, chuck it away, bury it, flush it down the toilet, get rid of it. It is okay to not be on your phone. It is okay to not reply. It is okay to not scroll for miles and miles and miles on social media. It's okay to miss out, turn your phone off, breathe and look up. My second one, I've kind of just mentioned, breathe. I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but not breathing is the #1 cause of death. Take time, big deep breaths, it feels amazing. And the last thing for me is music. I love music, and it's amazing how music can just take you away to another world. Get your favourite album on, turn it up loud, phone in a different room, shut your eyes, big deep breath, and just go. Enjoy.
How's it going? I'm Joe Sanok from practiceofthepractice.com and Podcast Launch School. My 3 mental health tips to help you get through this difficult time are, first, to take care of yourself. You cannot take care of others unless you take care of yourself. This is a great time to learn to speak up for yourself, to share what you need. If you need a walk and you need the support of your partner, or if you need your kids to just be quiet for an hour for you to read, do that. This often reveals what we aren't doing in our regular life when we're in crisis, so make sure you do that. Second, I would say find something creative to do. We may be feeling stir crazy inside. Recently, I've started painting. Our girls have started painting with me as well. And just finding something to do that is new, that's unique, that's a new skill, that's something that I think will add just a little levity to the situation. And last, view this as an adventure. There are real problems, there are real risks, there are real tragedies that are happening. But this, it's like a movie. It's something that we're going to talk about the rest of our lives. And when we get through it, life might feel a little bit boring. And so do your best to think through it and really try to be there for each other. Be kind, have grace with the people you love, take a deep breath before you engage with your kids, and we're all going through it together. And even if we're separated, know that we're all together. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
So my first tip would be to control the controllables. We're living in a world where we don't really have a lot of control right now, but we can control our day-to-day. So maintaining a really good routine around sleeping, eating, exercise, work, those are going to be really helpful for us to make life as predictable as possible. The second one would be to set really clear boundaries. We're going to be spending a whole lot more time with the people in our lives in a confined space, so being able to communicate about needing space is going to be really important. Maybe having designated areas of the house where you can go to get some of that space, and dividing and conquering when it comes to childcare so that you can each have time alone to yourselves. There's also an issue around having boundaries with work, so making sure that you're not working all the hours under the sun. And the third one would be to validate. Just validate this experience. There's no right or wrong in how you're feeling right now, and it's okay to say, I'm anxious, this is scary. And if we do that, we take added pressure off of ourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Lake and I am a mental health for high performance coach. The first tip I have for you is that emotions are not you, they are a part of you. It's okay to feel all of your feelings, ride the wave for the mandatory 90 seconds, and then remember to let the feeling go. It's okay to feel the feeling, it's not okay to stay with the feeling. I encourage you to read the poem called The Guest House by Rumi. Tip number 2 is to refocus your attention on desire and intention. Love is a much better motivator than fear. It actually has direction. So invest your energy into your best known action toward things like your goals, your healing, and what you honor as your values.
Yo, what's up world? Juan Martel here, the CEO of Psychologist. If you don't already know, I'm gonna give 3 mental health tips for you while you are in quarantine or in self-isolation. So, the first mental health tip I'm going to give is make sure you develop some sort of ritual for yourself and a good source on where you are acquiring the information for what's going on outside due to the coronavirus. Every area, every section, every country, every state, every city, every county has a different set of protocols for you to follow. And I suggest you use trusted sources to get the information that you need to follow these steps. The second tip I will give as far as for mental health purposes is to practice self-care and meditation techniques. As we all know, stress levels are directly correlated with the neurotransmitter called cortisol. And research has shown time and time again that meditation is directly associated with decreased levels of cortisol. So practice, it's a good time for you with this extra free time to practice self-care, trying new recipes of cooking, reading a new book, doing some yoga, doing even some exercise within the house, even some hobbies that you've wanted to work on for a while that you haven't. I heavily recommend that you try those. Number 3, for children, for those of you that have children, remember that children are aware. They may have questions because of their lack of knowledge. They have questions, but they are aware of what's going on to some extent, depending on their age level. I heavily suggest that you take this into consideration and you find some creative approach in not only communicating what's going on with your kids at the age appropriate level, of course, but also developing, like I mentioned earlier on the first tip, a routine within the house where you guys can practice and engage in, especially when we're all isolated. So practice these mental health tips for you.
I wanted to highlight the difference between recognising the seriousness of a situation and implementing a sort of sensible level of response in relation to that situation, and how that can potentially tip into panic and a response that's driven by panic and perhaps not such a helpful response. There are 2 kinds of worry. The first kind of worry is what we call helpful worry. And helpful worry is very useful because what it does is drives us to do things to keep ourselves safe or to put sensible precautions in place in face of a threat. That, I would think, is a sort of proportionate response to the threat that is presented, and a response that once has been put in place, you're able to draw a line under it until it needs revised. Unhelpful worry is the type that can really escalate and lead us to panic and feel really, really overwhelmed and out of control. Unhelpful worry is where we find ourselves engaging in thoughts that are repetitive, that are focused on worst case scenarios, that are catastrophizing type of thoughts, and that don't lead us to implementing behaviour that is in what you might term sensible precautions, but rather tips us into behaviour that is perhaps unhelpful to us, whether that is physical types of behaviours or mental behaviours like thinking over and over worst case scenarios, or accessing lots and lots of information, perhaps not from overly reliable sources, and consuming the same information repetitively. If we engage in that kind of behaviour excessively, what that does is escalate that sense of panic and that sense of helplessness, and we become increasingly overwhelmed and in no more in control of the situation than we were with the first kind of worry.
Hi. So a colleague has pointed out to me that we're talking a lot at the moment about social distancing, but really what we mean by that is physical distancing as opposed to social distancing. What's really important at the moment is retaining those social interactions, and although we can't retain those through meeting up in person, what we can do is retain those social interactions through telephone communication, through using video conferencing facilities such as Skype or Zoom, through social media contact, through email. Now is a time that many people, particularly those who are considered to be vulnerable or in the high-risk groups, might be isolating themselves to stay safe, and so they could particularly struggle with their mental health as a result of that. So reaching out, making sure that they feel connected, making sure that we can somehow retain that contact with them, and also for us too, to ensure that we're feeling connected to others, so important. So my top tip, social communication.
In transactional analysis, we think about 3 psychobiological hungers that we need for our own health and well-being. These are structure, stimulation, and recognition. As we self-isolate and take care of ourselves in terms of the coronavirus, often we lose these things that we have in our life, and it's important to think about how to maintain them. Think about how you can create some structure in your life, how you can create stimulation by doing something like an online course or something like that. And in terms of recognition, that's contact with other human beings. We can always do that virtually, even if we can't do it face to face. Take care.
Hi guys, Carl here from Blokes Psychology in Melbourne, Australia, with my top tip for maintaining your mental health and well-being throughout this coronavirus crisis that is impacting us all worldwide. Social connection. Social distancing does not have to mean social isolation or disconnection. Sure, it's going to be harder to maintain our friendships, our relationships with family members. We have to avoid larger gatherings and might not be able to have those social events that we otherwise would have, but we need to get creative. This could go on for weeks or months to come, unfortunately. It's uncertain, but we need to maintain our social relationships throughout this time. So utilize technology to your advantage. Utilize FaceTime, video calls. Pick up the phone like back in the 90s and just call a mate, call a family member to have a chat. And lastly, spare a thought for those vulnerable people in your lives who are suffering from mental health issues, or who maybe are living on their own and you know that they're prone to loneliness. If you can't go out and see them, give them a call, check in on them, make sure they're okay, because we will get through this, but it's going to be a hell of a lot easier if we stay socially connected and get through it together and take care of each other. Take care and all the best.
Okay. My recommendations are to, yes, socially distance yourself, but make sure you still get outside, get fresh air, exercise. Don't forget, that's very important. Do stock up on your list of books that you've wanted to read, podcast episodes you've wanted to listen to, TV series you've wanted to binge, and make the most of this time in isolation. And do minimise your exposure to too much information about coronavirus. Choose one reputable source and stick to that for the information that you need, and don't saturate yourself with any excess.
Okay guys, I really hope that you found that useful. We've had so much interest from different psychologists, therapists, and other big figures who are willing to give their top tips on mental health. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do another part of this. This will be the first part. We're going to do a second part maybe next week from some other individuals who are willing to give their top tips on how to manage mental health and anxiety in these uncertain times. I want to thank every single psychologist, therapist, speaker, anybody who was part of this video today for giving their time and helping people manage their mental health and their anxiety. If you guys have any tips, make sure to get in touch with us. GetPsyched are going to be doing a number of different things over the course of the coming weeks on how to manage our mental health and our anxiety in these really strange times. And I want to say as well, guys, make sure to stay safe for yourself. Ensure that we're following those government guidelines of social distancing and self-isolating if need be. But also, as much as it's right that we focus a lot on our physical health, don't forget to look at that mental health as well and help manage that mental health where you can. Stay safe, guys, and I'll catch you soon.